Carbon-rich soil is dark, crumbly, and fertile, and retains some water. But erosion can occur if soil is dry, which is a likely effect if it contains inadequate amounts of carbon. Erosion is, of course, bad for people trying to grow crops or breed animals on that terrain. In the 1970s and 80s, Law was studying soils in Africa so devoid of organic matter that the ground had become extremely hard, like cement. There he met a pioneer in the study of global warming, who suggested that carbon from the soil had moved into the atmosphere. This is now looking increasingly likely. Teamwork can also lead to inconsistency, a common cause of poor sales. In the case of a smartphone that a certain company launched, one director wanted to target the business market, and another demanded it was aimed at consumers. The company wanted both directors to be involved, so gave the product a consumer-friendly name, but marketed it to companies. The result was that it met the needs of neither group. It would have been better to let one director or the other have his way, not both. Now, industriousness or hard work. It's easy to mock people who say they work hard.
Let's look at a couple of cases to see the equity theory in action. We'll talk about this theory in terms of an imaginary employee. Let's call him Bill. In the first case, a coworker of Bill's named Sally has the same job title as Bill and does the same amount of work. She makes a little less money, but she has more flexible hours. She can leave work earlier, come in later if she is paid a little extra to be available during certain set hours. He can't come and go like Sally can. In this situation, Bill will feel satisfied with his job if he values the extra money more than the flexibility of work hours. That's, in his opinion, he receives equal or better return for his contribution than Sally does. According to the equity theory, Sally will also feel satisfied if she values the flexible hours more than the extra money. Even though she does the same amount of work as Bill or makes the same contribution, she knows that her schedule is much more flexible.
The man doesn't agree with the policy on pets. The policy states that no pets are allowed on campus, except for animals to help disabled people. The woman tells him that the president changed the policy because he found a pet snake in his office. But the man thinks that the president is reacting too strongly and that it's not fair to punish everyone. The man also says that people from the neighborhood walk their dogs on campus. According to the notice, animals aren't going to be allowed on campus for safety reasons, but the man disagrees and says that the dogs are safe because people control them. Finally, the man believes that if people can't walk their dogs, there will be less friendly interaction between students on campus and the people in the neighborhood.
A second experiment involved a newly invented device that could detect very high-frequency sounds, much higher than humans can hear. They found that when the bats were flying, the device detected high-frequency sounds. It also measured the fact that the sounds were detected more often if the bat was approaching an object. That is, the bats made more calls as they got closer to an object they wanted to avoid. Finally, the two scientists used other new technology to measure how the cells in the inner ears of the bats respond to sounds, and they found that the bat's cells responded to sounds much higher than a human can hear. So really, the best way to prove something is to do so in multiple ways.
If you've ever spent any time in Brazil, you may have noticed how many different gestures they have. During my first few months there, people would gesture while they were speaking to communicate other ideas along with their words. It took me a while before I even noticed that these gestures were being made. But because I had no familiarity with the gestures they were using, I didn't know they were attempting to communicate ideas beyond just their words. It wasn't until I had been there for some time and began to ask about the gestures that I started to understand. I realized that I had been missing parts of conversations simply because I wasn't understanding the meaning of gestures or even aware that they were deliberate attempts to convey additional meaning.
This type of leaf arrangement isn't as common as the alternate arrangement, with one leaf at each node, but is still very evident, such as on maple trees. This type of leaf arrangement is the least common of all. Now it doesn't occur as frequently as either the opposite or the alternate arrangement. Now, this whorled arrangement consists of 3 or more leaves attached to the stalk of the plant at the same node. You can see 3 leaves at the same node, but it's also possible for there to be more than 3 leaves at the same node, and it would still be considered a whorled arrangement. You can spot this whorled arrangement in many ground covers.
So from the start, there were already different settlements within the land called Carolina. So by the end of the 17th century, Charleston had become a successful port, had a plantation-style economy, and was exporting rice and indigo, a plant used in producing a popular dye. But, as one would expect, the settlers in and around Charleston were not too pleased with the rule of the proprietors. They had always resisted the original plan for government, and in fact, it was abandoned by 1690. In 1709, these settlers revolted and offered their colony directly to the British Crown to control.
Thanks for making the time to come and see me. As you know, there are a couple of things I think we need to discuss about your progress in the course. Not a problem. It's really part of my job to make sure everyone enrolled in the course is getting as much out of it as they can. If we just look at this spreadsheet, which outlines your assessment results so far, you can see that while your grades were initially fine, certainly in the average for the year group as a whole, towards the end of semester 1, they've started to drop off a bit. I must admit that I had to take a fortnight off just after mid-semester break, and I really felt that the work I missed in those 2 lab sessions have made it really hard for me to understand some of the underlying material required for the rest of the course. Well, thanks for being so honest, Angelina. I think we're going to have to think about putting some strategies in place so that by the end of year assessments, you're going to have a fair chance of passing. Well, yeah, thanks, Professor Smith. I couldn't agree more, but I must admit I'm at the point where I don't really know where to start to get on top of this.
Yes, well, Lisa, I'm still trying to get my head around the choice of electives for the optional part of the third-year program. I was thinking of taking personal taxation law and company tax, together with the extra 5 credit point course on goods and services and VAT type taxes. But I'm a bit concerned that I'm going to pigeonhole myself too early in the course. As you know, there are going to be interviews for summer clerkships coming up, and I really don't want to come across as too focused on certain areas that a lot of firms don't even have a practice in. Well, don't forget, only about 25% of the course at this stage is elective-based, and you'll still have that core of subjects: crim, legal institutions, evidence, property law, general commercial, and FedCon law, all of which would be of interest to a lot of firms. So if I were you, which I'm not, I'd really just go with what my interests are and enjoy the chance to undertake some work in an area that I'm motivated to pursue. Don't you think? There's an awful lot of time in this profession where you'll be undertaking long, stressful hours on projects that don't really interest you as much.